In his final words to the leadership of the Ephesian church, Paul had some very sobering words to say. He said in Acts chapter 20, "So guard yourselves and God's people. Feed and shepherd God's flock, his church, purchased with his own blood, over which the Holy Spirit has appointed you as leaders. I know that false teachers like vicious wolves will come in among you after I leave, not sparing the flock. Even some men from your own group will rise up and distort the truth in order to draw a following. Watch out. Remember the 3 years I was with you, my constant watch and care over you, night and day, and many tears for you." Today we're going to speak about something that may be a little uncomfortable. How to spot a wolf in your midst. Back in a moment.
Welcome to Minister's Toolbox, providing leaders with the tools they need to succeed in ministry. Now, here's your host, Casey Sabella.
A couple of decades ago, Kevin Costner, when he was a young actor, really kind of made his way in Hollywood by producing a film called Dances with Wolves. And the story was kind of unique. It was about a soldier back in 150 years ago or so, back in the Plains area when there was a lot of Indians and such. He was assigned to a post out in the middle of nowhere. And he took over that post, and during that time he was alone, and he was visited from time to time by a wolf that he named, if I recall correctly, Socks. And over time he developed a relationship with this wolf, and the story kind of fans out from there, talks about how he develops a relationship with the Indians and eventually becomes one himself. And again, this isn't a review of an old film, but it gave us the kind of flavor that wolves are really not what we think they are, that they're really very nice animals. They're kind of really like dogs, and they do come from that family. But the film leaves, unfortunately, the wrong impression. Wolves are wolves, and they do live up to their reputation. Paul had a warning to the Ephesian elders here, and he said, watch out, because vicious wolves will come around you. Sometimes those wolves come from your own people. So you're not really looking for them. You're going to need to be able to recognize a wolf in your midst, because a wolf will take your sheep, they'll kill them, and they'll use them for their own pleasure. And that's the nature of wolves. Now, if you've been in pastoral ministry any amount of time, you've probably dealt with a wolf or two. And many times, perhaps you didn't recognize it. I know that in my ministry of over 4 decades, I have encountered wolves. And initially, they didn't look like wolves. They don't show up and appear like wolves. But over time, they began to manifest the characteristics of wolves. So let's chat about that a little bit today. Jesus told a parable in the Gospels about 10 lepers. And I know if you as a leader probably preached on this a couple of times. About 10 lepers who came to Jesus, and they all wanted to be healed. And Jesus promptly healed them and told them to go show themselves to the priests. And as they went, Scripture shares with us, they were healed. All 10 of them healed of a disease that was horrible. And yet only one of those lepers came back when he noticed he was healed, turned back, went and found Jesus, and he wanted to give thanks to him. He wanted to thank him for what he had done. Now, what does this have to do with wolves? Well, let me share something with you that may give you some insight into the nature of leadership anyway. That one person who came back is what being a disciple is really all about. Disciples are those who begin their walk by being appreciative of what God has done. The other 9 were just happy to get healed. They were happy to be on their way, and they had no intention of living their life in accordance with Jesus' commands. They just wanted their need met. Honestly, everyone comes to our church today. Everyone initially comes to our churches. And what is their primary purpose? They're not there to become servants. They're not there to become leaders. They're not there to bless us in any way. They're not there to even give money to us. They're not there for any other reason except to get their need met. Maybe they need forgiveness. Maybe they need healing, physical healing or spiritual healing. Maybe they need some kind of counseling or direction or guidance. Whatever it is, we all come to Christ with a need. That's not a problem. Many Christians, unfortunately, never grow beyond that stage. They see the church as a means of meeting a need. And so when they come to church, they're really primarily there to take something. And if the sermons don't rise to their liking after a time, then they leave. And we all have experienced this in ministry. You have people who will come to a church for a certain amount of time, and then they reach the conclusion that your sermons no longer really are impacting their lives, or it's not the way it used to be when they first came to the church, and all the other excuses. The truth of the matter is they've never grown. Now, it isn't because you haven't taught them properly. It isn't because they haven't heard Scripture. It isn't because they didn't have the opportunity to grow. It's because they kept adopting the same position of taking. And you can't grow in Christ if your whole position is what you can get out of the experience. If you only see Christianity as something you can get, I want to get healing, I want to get blessed, I want to worship, I want to enjoy myself, I want to have joy, I want to have all these things. If it's all about you, then eventually you're going to fall away. I'm just telling you the truth. And that's just the way it is. And I think as a pastor, as a leader, you pretty much know that. The one that we're looking for is the 1 out of 10. And the statistics are pretty close to that. About 1 out of the 10 people who come to our church are going to be that one who turns back and is appreciative of what God has done for them. And it's a unique thing when we find someone who really appreciates what God has done for them, and because they appreciate that, they want to give back. They want to hang with Christ. They want to really find out what it means to serve the Lord. They want to go deeper. And we cherish those people, and we want to do that all we can to help disciple those people. Those are the real disciples that we're called to minister to and to raise up and to make into the ministers of the gospel of the future. Now, you're going to have people that come to your church, and they fulfill that position. They are people who are grateful for what God has done. And that isn't the only factor, but let me just share a story with you to kind of illustrate what I'm getting at. There was a man a number of years ago, came to our church, and he was one of those 10 lepers. He came back and he was so appreciative of the teaching. He loved the church. He loved everything we were doing. He loved to just get involved. And he started coming early and leaving late. He couldn't do enough for our church. He couldn't do enough to serve. He'd show up at inconvenient times to do things that were chores that no one else wanted to do. He demonstrated real servanthood. And because of that, over time, we eventually put him in an entry-level position in our leadership team. We invited him to be part of that in an entry-level position. So he had somewhat of a title. And again, all of our churches have various titles, and I'm not going to get into that right now. But we gave him a title to commensurate with what he was doing in our church. And something changed just a little bit when he got that title. And pay attention to this, because this is the real, one of the things that really can show you where people's hearts are at. Titles can be dangerous. Jesus made it clear. He said it to his disciples. He says, I don't want you to be called rabbi. Don't you be called all these titles. He said, because what it does to you is it makes you into something you're not. He said, rabbis, they love to be greeted in the marketplace. They love to be recognized. They love people to say, oh, rabbi. In our case, in the New Testament, oh, we love to be called pastor. Oh, reverend, pastor. Folks, I am a pastor. I've got the reverend title, I've got the ordination, I've got all of that stuff. But folks, that's not who I am. My name is Casey Sabella. That's my mother's name for me. That's the name that people use when they're addressing me. You can do whatever you want in your church. Some people call me pastor, and that's fine. I'm not against that. But for the most part, titles can be really deceptive. They can get us into thinking that we're different than other people. We have a different calling, for sure. But we're no different than those we serve. And we have to keep in mind that the purpose of that title is to serve. In fact, when I was ordained, and I thank God for it, when I was ordained, my pastor, when he ordained me into the pastoral ministry, he was part of the ordination team, what they gave me at my ordination was a towel. The towel had the inscription of my name on it and the date of the ordination, which was in August of 1981. Yeah, it was that long ago. He gave me that as an ordination reminder, and I kept it up on my wall for a number of years. I still have it. And it's a towel, because it really illustrates what it means to serve the Lord. Whether you're serving the Lord as a pastor or whatever you're doing, whenever you have a title, your primary purpose is to wash feet. That's the purpose. Anyway, I don't want to get too distracted here. But anyway, this particular individual, he began to kind of feel good about himself. Now, he continued to serve, But he began to kind of demonstrate a certain amount of aggression. And it didn't show up really obviously, but he began to be rather pleased with himself, is the only way I can put it. And, we kind of give people license for that because there's, you adjust to a position, I suppose. But over time, that kind of calcified in his life. He became a little more proud, if that's the word that I can use. And our leadership began to add other people to the leadership team, and the church grew, so we began to add other people, and he became a little bit concerned about other people. He became somewhat competitive with other leaders. In our leadership meetings, he would speak up about things that he disagreed with. And often he was the only one disagreeing with the team. In fact, many times we were coming to a consensus and he was the only one who just didn't agree. And he didn't say, I disagree, but he would just say, well, if you think so. He was just sort of passive aggressive. I took note of it because that's not really what it means to be a disciple. Again, we can have disagreements, and there's a variety of ways the Scripture tells us to solve those disagreements, but we could just tell there was something going on with him, and over time that grew. Now again, there was a number of circumstances that came into play that I don't want to get into all the details of it, it's not necessary. But what began to manifest is that he began to put himself forward. His agenda became more important than the church's agenda. He began to disagree with the leadership decisions. And many of these were administrative decisions. They weren't major. They were things about how we operate. They were principles on which we wanted to function. They were things that made us a little closer to where we wanted to be in the future. And it just seemed like with every decision we made, he was always bucking change. And we came to a place where we needed to paint the sanctuary. It was kind of interesting. And he was the only leader who didn't show up to help. It wasn't that he said, I won't help. He just didn't show up. He began to distance himself from the serving aspect of being a leader. Well, that caught my attention, and I began to speak with him about it. We sat down for many sessions. And again, he expressed no necessarily disagreement, but he didn't really agree with what we were doing either. He became just somewhat subversive in that. And what I didn't realize is that he was beginning to gather people around him. This is the nature of wolves. This is the nature of wolves. I want you to catch this. This is the nature of them. When you look at the natural nature of wolves, they are predators. They are after something. They have an agenda, and they are very focused. Wolves get what they're looking for, and they're looking for sheep. In the case of actual wolves, they want to get sheep to eat them. They want to consume them as a meal. In spiritual sheep, they want sheep to follow them. And this is what Paul points out. You notice here in Ephesians, he says, they'll come in among you, not sparing the flock. Some men from your own group will rise up and distort the truth in order to draw a following. There it is. That's the nature of wolves. They're looking to create a following. Now, I didn't realize at the time, but he had already made a decision that he was going to leave our church. However, before he actually came to the point of leaving our church, he began to look for people to follow him. When we had new people come into the church, he was the first one to greet them. He was the first one to talk to them. He was the most friendly individual when it came to new people in our church. It looked like he was back being his old self, being a servant. But what he was really doing is he was catching their names, he was catching their addresses, and he was looking to invite them to his church where he started a group. And that group he had in mind was going to become a church. Well, eventually it came to a time of confrontation, and I needed to confront him and saying, we're going two different directions here. You need to go a different direction. We're not in agreement here. So I dismissed him from our fellowship, but not before he took a handful of people from our church. Most of them were new people who didn't know any better. Some of them came to me and said, what do you think about this situation? And I had to tell them plainly, this is what's going on. However, this individual had formed a relationship with them, so now they didn't know who to believe. Many of them just decided to go and follow this wolf to his group, and that's where they went. Unfortunately, they came in among us, he came in among us, he took our people from our flock to form his own group. Now, that group has never gone anywhere and never will. He gave himself a title. You can do that today. You can right away and you can do a course online and you can become a pastor or whatever you want to become. Become an apostle for all I care. But you can do that in today's day and age. That doesn't establish you in the kingdom of God as a leader. You know, as a leader, if you're a genuine leader of Christ, you know that your calling is from Jesus Christ. And yes, there is a time that you can go for education, there's Bible school, there's all those things that are all helpful, but that doesn't determine whether you're a leader or not. What determines you're a leader or not is whether God has called you. Number one, if Jesus has called you to be a leader, if he's called you to be a pastor, that's the number one thing. If he hasn't called you, no amount of education is going to fix that. You can tell the jokes, you can speak real well, you can maybe be the greatest public speaker in the world, but if God hasn't called you to it, you better not be in that pulpit. You don't belong there, and God won't bless it. Well, you know that already. I don't need to tell you that if you're a leader in the Church of Jesus Christ. In any case, when you look at wolves and their operations, the way that they function is it's always about them. That's the number one thing that you're going to find with wolves. They are always about themselves. And so there was a parting of the ways. My good friend Yanel, and I've shared this in a couple of other podcasts, but it's a principle that I think needs to be repeated from time to time. He shared with our congregation, actually I was part of a larger congregation of churches that were gathered, and he was speaking, and he referenced an Old Testament scripture where David is coming back to his place as king. And Saul has now died, and he's reestablishing himself in the kingdom of Judah. And he comes back, and he's met by the men, I believe it was from Hebron. And they come, and David asks a question. He says, listen, are you coming as a friend or are you coming as an enemy? Where am I standing with you? And these men came to him and said, we are yours. O David, we are yours. You see, that's the characteristic of someone who is a genuine leader, is someone that you can entrust with more responsibility. They have placed themselves in your hands. A wolf comes with a different agenda. They will say, you are ours. In other words, you better serve my need. You better take care of what I want. You better meet my expectations. Your sermons better match what I'm looking for. Your environment better be what I'm looking. It's all about them. There's the characteristic. Wolves are about themselves, and spiritual leaders keep that sheep heart, the one of following, the one of being teachable, the one of being correctable. And that's really where the rubber meets the road, isn't it? If you find someone that you need to correct, and they balk at that, and they rebel at that, that tells you that they're not ready for real leadership. You need to be someone, as a leader in Christ, where you're willing to receive correction. That establishes whether you're truly a leader or not. So this is just a brief exhortation this morning, and I hope that it's helpful to you. To spot a wolf in the midst, look for those characteristics where that person is placing themselves first. A number of years ago as well, there was an individual who called me on the phone, and when they introduced themselves with a full title, the Reverend so-and-so. They wanted to come to our church. Great, come. That's wonderful. I'm not against that. I mean, it was kind of strange to me that they needed to represent themselves as a reverend, but fine. I later found out that their reverend title came from a certification that was done in a very large meeting where there were hundreds of people, and they went through a week course. I think the word is WEAK. And at the end, they were given a certification. This person took that certification and then began to call themselves a reverend. Folks, when people put themselves first like that, they are a wolf in sheep's clothing. And this person attempted to again, put themselves forward and invite people to their house and try to get people to follow them. That's always the characteristic of a wolf. They try to lead people away to themselves. Be careful of those who want to serve but have their own agenda. That tells you that they are a wolf. And this is what Paul is warning the Ephesians. Some will rise up among you, and they will try to teach people. They will try to tell people, this is the way to go. This is the way we should be doing things. I do this too, except that, the pastor won't let me do it, but you can come to my house and we're going to do. That's the wolf that we need to be careful of. I don't know if you have wolves in your midst, and I hope you don't. I pray that God relieves us of anybody with a wolf's heart. And I think that, when I look at the congregation that God has given me, I'm pretty happy with it. But you never know in these days and age, the people that are going to come our way, that all of a sudden they seem like they're going in the right direction, like that man that I was discussing earlier, and all of a sudden They start moving in a different direction when it's not going well for them. Beware, because we always have the responsibility to protect our congregations from those who will do them damage. So how do you deal with wolves in your midst? Well, to be honest with you, when you're looking at actual wolves, there's only really one way to deal with a wolf, and that's to confront them. You can't deal with a wolf by running away from them because they'll catch. They'll get you. They are wolves. That's their nature. They're vicious, and they're aggressive, and they're single-minded. You can't run away from a wolf to deal with a wolf. The only way to deal with a wolf is to deal with them head on. In the case of a hunter, you know what that means. You've got to kill them. You've got to hit them with something really hard. And when it comes to spiritual wolves, you've got to hit them. You've got to confront them straight on. You have someone who's doing damage in your church, or someone who is doing something really wrong and they're not repenting of it. Don't fool around. You need to confront them. You need to speak with them. Call them aside. Say, listen, I want to meet with you. And bring it to their attention. I've had a number of very difficult conversations, and at the end of those conversations, many times those people have left the church, and good. Because I don't want anyone in our church who is there as a wolf. The only way to deal with a wolf is to confront them, and that got to be head on. And I will hit them square in the eyes, square in the head with Scripture, and say, you will not do this anymore. I forbid you from doing this anymore. I forbid you from inviting people to your house and trying to teach them or trying to do things that I haven't instructed you to do. I forbid you. You see, we need to be confrontational at times. And when you're dealing with wolves, there's no way to compromise with them. When you try to placate them, you're allowing them just to gain a larger following and to cause more destructive behavior. Take it from someone who's been in ministry for 4 decades. You can't play with a wolf. There's no dances with wolves. It is only confronting a wolf. They're not nice. And you must confront them for the sake of the other sheep. Count them as those who are lost in terms of your pastoring. In all likelihood, it's very rare that I see a wolf turn around because they've already fixed in their minds and their hearts that they want to take something from you. Don't let them do it. Now, before we end this podcast, you know that I always end with a quote especially for you, and this one is appropriate. It comes from someone who's in the news right now in a very controversial way. But his quote is very powerful. It's from Rudy Giuliani. He said these words, "When you confront a problem, you begin to solve it. When you confront a problem, you begin to solve it." A lot of wisdom there for pastors in dealing with wolves. Until next time.
For more resources, go to ministerstoolbox.com. Thanks for listening.